Hello and welcome, everybody. We're just going to give it a minute before we get started as we see folks trickling in. But welcome to our application tips webinar for the GBS program. I'm really excited to be here today, this morning New Haven time, with my colleague Matthew Lassance. Do you want to say hi, Matt?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a good start to your day or a good end to your Monday. It's great to be here with you. Looking forward to talking a little bit more about the application.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I can still see a few more people trickling in, but I think we'll get started. So again, we're here today to talk about the application for the GBS program here at the Yale School of Management. We're not going to dive into program specifics too much today. We're going to leave that for another webinar. We have a few of them already recorded and up on our website, so please feel free to go and check those out if that's something that you're looking for a bit more information on. But today we really wanted to reserve this time to dive into our application. So we're going to give you at the beginning of this webinar today a little bit of an overview of kind of our application pathway and timeline. And then we're really going to focus most of our time diving into each element of our application, talking specifically about that element, what we're looking for, and how you can really be presenting your best application in each section. So how to put together overall a really strong application. Um, we will be reserving time at the end for questions as well, so please hold on to your questions. We do have a Q&A feature in this webinar, so feel free to use that, and we'll definitely spend some time at the end answering your questions live. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Matt to kick us off, and then again we'll dive into each element of the application, and Matt and I will just kind of pass back and forth to talk specifically about each part of our application. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Evelyn. So let's kind of get started real quick talking about sort of the application and the timeline. So with our application for GBS, there's two pathways that can lead to the Yale GBS program. So there's the M2M pathway, which you would go to, you would complete your MIM school application as well as the Yale GBS application, and you would apply for both schools at the same time before you've started either program and be admitted potentially to both programs, which basically allows you to know, okay, the next 2 years of my life, this is what the pathway looks like and what I'm going to be doing. There's the other pathway, which is our standard application pathway. And during your MIM program, or maybe shortly thereafter, students or alumni will fill out the GBS application and submit that to us. If admitted, you would join the Yale GBS program, and you would also join that same M2M pathway cohort as the Yale GBS cohort. So I just want to give you an idea. Typically, I believe about a third of our class is made up of standalone or standard pathway GBS students, and the other 2/3 come from the M2M pathway. So if you see that, just know that's kind of the two pathways that can lead to Yale's GBS program and Yale SOM. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline and what it looks like. So our first round, which is coming up in, I believe, less than a month now, our deadline is January 8th, and that round is exclusively open to students and applicants from GNAM schools, so the Global Network for Advanced Management. With that, all students from any school are eligible to apply in rounds 2 and 3, and those deadlines are February 19th and April 9th of this upcoming year. Really, I just want to put this out there because I know it's always a big question. What are the advantages, or is there any disadvantage applying in round 2 versus round 1 or round 3 versus round 2? There really isn't any disadvantage there. I would say the advantage to, having the opportunity to apply in round 1 versus round 2 is you have an opportunity to know if you're coming to Yale or if you are admitted, and kind of get started on, the visa work, getting settled in and figuring out, okay, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? All of those sorts of details. Same thing with rounds 2 and 3. It just, as you get further along, you got to be more on top of things and ready to jump right into finding, housing, figuring out how you're going to get here, visa, all of that sort of stuff. So I just want to make sure that's clear as to, there really is no disadvantage. I would say there's just a slight advantage in terms of planning your journey here. One of the other pieces that I want to mention about this, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it, is submit your application when it's at its best. Don't just submit in round one because you think, oh, round one, I'm going to get the first look, there's the best opportunity. If your application is not at its best in round one, it's fine to apply in round two. You will be perfectly fine. We have slots in every round, we have scholarship money in every round. I want to make that clear to everyone that there are opportunities in every round. So submit your best application in whatever round it's going to be its best. So let's talk briefly. We're going to jump into the GBS application. We're going to talk about a few different things: transcripts, test scores, talk a little bit about your resume, the recommendation letters, video questions, and then, of course, one of the big ones, essays. So we're going to dive into this. I'm going to pass it back over to Evelyn to get us started off here in just a second.
Thank you, Matt. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be saving some time at the end for questions to answer live. So again, please feel free to use the Q&A feature of our webinar this morning or today to ask us any questions that you might have as we go through each element of the application. But again, we're going to be saving all the questions until the end to answer together at that time. So let's dive in. First up, we're talking about transcripts. So transcripts, of course, are one of the ways, together with your test score, that we are able to assess your academic journey so far and your potential not only to succeed, but really to thrive in our GBS program. We do have a very rigorous program here at Yale SOM. Sometimes people think that getting in is the hard part, but it's really not. So we do have a very rigorous academic program here. And so we'd really like to see what your academic history has looked like up until this date to make sure that this program is going to be the best fit for you. Um, so we're looking not only at your GPA, but also the types of courses that you've taken, what your quant performance has been so far to date. But that does not mean that you needed to have a major in a quant heavy area. We take students from all different backgrounds, and we really like bringing together students who have a very well-rounded overall approach to their academics as well. So don't feel like you need to have taken only quant classes, but that is something that we're looking for as we're assessing your transcripts. So transcripts are going to be required from each of your degree granting institutions. So what this means is your undergrad grades. If you are currently enrolled in a MIM program, we'd like to see the grades that you have in that program to date. If you've been on exchange or you had grades transferred from another academic institution, we'd like to see all of those transcripts. So just keep that in mind as you're putting together your transcripts for your application. Again, even if your MIM program is still in progress, if you're currently a MIM student, that's fine. We're not expecting to see all the grades for your whole program if you haven't finished it yet, but please do send us any grades that you do have already. Unofficial transcripts are totally fine up until enrollment. So anything that you can get from your school, even if it's unofficial, will be absolutely fine for this for the application. Please also make sure that you submit everything in English. We really need to see the name of your school, of course, your name on the on the transcripts. We'd like to see the names of the courses that you took as well. Again, this helps us to kind of assess your performance in different areas of your academics. And over to test scores. So like I mentioned earlier, the test score together with your transcripts are going to give us the whole picture of your academic journey so far. So this is just a piece of your application, but it is a required piece. So we require the GMAT or the GRE, and we do take the new GMAT Focus version as well. Sometimes students ask if this can be waived. Unfortunately, the answer is no. It is a required part of the application. So please make sure that you take or are planning to take the GMAT or the GRE. If you didn't need to take one of these tests for your MIM program, don't worry, there's still plenty of time. I believe you can take them online. And we can accept, just like with the transcripts, an unofficial score, we can accept an unofficial test score with your application, but please note that you will need to send us the official scores through the GMAC website, and you can find our school number on our website to send to the GBS program. So just keep in mind that we will need to receive your official scores pretty soon to have as part of your application as well. All right, I'm going to hand back over to Matt to talk about the resume element of our application.
Thanks, Evelyn. So let's talk a little bit about the resume and what we're looking for, because this is often something that I think people overlook or sometimes just upload their most recent resume and move right along. And I think just like you're applying for a job, you want to make sure that your resume is kind of curated to where you're applying to. So let's talk a little bit about it. So it should be a snapshot of your professional history. So 1 to 2 pages maximum length, I think is good. Make it curated, chronological order. Make sure that you put some bullet points in there about what you did in, each one of your experiences. Give us a little bit more information. That way we can kind of get to know, okay, what did you do as an intern or in this position? Make sure you include all of your work experience to date. I think sometimes people leave out stuff or, skip over things. You can tell us about all the different work experience you've done. We want to see, this is an opportunity to showcase what you've done and what you've achieved or the experiences you've had. One of the other major pieces include proof of the employment. So we're looking for, internship certificate, if you've been paid pay stubs, some sort of contract, documents like that. We do, after if you are admitted, send over your information and do a background verification, and they'll reach out to employers and everything. So it helps that we can kind of start that and just quickly review, make sure, okay, this is good. And any experience that doesn't have proof, we do, have to kind of set that aside and focus on the ones that do have proof of employment. One of the other things, make sure that you're putting down the company or the person that you worked for. Sometimes, through hiring companies or different roles, you'll have sort of a middle person that is actually the one hiring, and you may be working on a project for someone else. Make sure that you clarify that, or that it's clearly labeled in your employment history. And anything that you don't have proof for, you can add into additional, but make sure that you're making it very clear that this is that you don't have that proof, or that we're evaluating it as sort of an additional experience versus work experience per se. And really make sure, it's okay to include activities that are important to you. This is also an opportunity to kind of showcase who you are, and kind of, I know that you can't explain everything about who you are and what you're about in 1 to 2 pages, but this is an opportunity to showcase a little bit more about you. And we really want to get to know you through this resume, get to know your experiences, what you've done. One of the other pieces on this that I think sometimes goes missed, you know, we have a number of students that often will put in, if you've volunteered, if you've done things like that, let us know. We want to see, what you do outside of work or the workplace. So definitely let the resume be an opportunity to showcase who you are and really show much more about you. So let's talk a little bit about, oh, yes, sorry. Can we go back one? Sorry, I was one slide behind there. Or for whatever reason, it didn't load. So with the work, as I mentioned, contract, payslip, letter from human resources, tax documents, all of that sort of stuff. Just make sure, and if you work for a foreign company and some of the documents may be in a different language, make sure that if you can get them translated to English, you do and submit them. It makes it a lot easier to review and just kind of check what belongs to what and all of that sort of stuff. And make sure the dates and titles as well, because oftentimes in proof of employment, we'll see on there, intern in this role versus on your resume, it may say, analyst and something, something, something. We want to see, be able to match it up very quickly and easily. And we don't want it to look like, okay, I'm seeing intern versus, analyst, or intern versus something, different on the resume. And then, so now recommendations.
Great. I can talk about our recommendations. So we have two different recommendation letters that we require for our application. So the first one is a professional letter of recommendation. So this has to come directly from somebody that you've worked with recently. So preferably your current or previous supervisor, although it doesn't have to be. Titles are less important. The main thing is for you to ask somebody who knows you really well, who can tell some really great stories about you and really talk about what it's like working with you. So those are really the things that we're looking for from the recommender. The recommender needs to submit this letter directly themselves, and it has to come from their professional email address. So please don't submit with Gmail or Yahoo or QQ email accounts. We won't be able to accept those. So please ask your recommender to have your letter ready and submit it directly to our application from their professional email address. So again, we're looking for somebody who can speak to your character, your performance, and also your potential for leadership opportunities or just what your potential in the workforce is going to look like. Remember to request these letters well in advance. Recommenders are busy people, and so give them plenty of time to submit their recommendation letter. The letter of recommendation is due at the same time as the application itself. So again, as you're preparing your application, make sure that you request this well in advance. A good tip might be to take out your recommender for coffee or for a lunch, a good time to reconnect with them, remind them of some great stories or some of your great achievements while you were working with them. Maybe update them on, you know, any recent if your goals have changed recently, that would be something that you'd like to share with them. And also just letting them know why the GBS program is really going to help you and why this step makes sense for you at this stage in your career. Those are all great things that they can write about in their letter of recommendation. Secondly, we require a letter from the dean or director of your MIM program. So again, this is just for students who are applying through the standalone pathway, through just to the GBS program. If you are applying M2M with a partner school, you haven't started your MIM program yet, and so this letter would be waived for you. But for those of you who are already enrolled or have even finished an MIM program, you would need to submit this letter of recommendation. So check in with your MIM program. If you're not sure who the correct person is, don't just write the dean of your school because it might not be them. It's most likely to be the director of your MIM program. Sometimes they have the title of a dean. But again, same with the professional letter of recommendation. Make sure that you request this letter well in advance because it does have to be submitted by the application deadline in order to be reviewed as part of your application. In this letter, we're really looking for a character reference, letting us know that you were a good citizen of the school, that you contributed to the program, and that you were successful in your endeavors at the school as well. Okay, let's talk about the essays. So here we have 3 essay questions that are part of our application. They're pretty short. I think they're about 300 words each. So something to keep in mind as you're crafting your answers that they don't have to be too long. But please do kind of answer the question fully, stick to the point, because you don't have too much time or extra word space to really go off on tangents. So just keep that in mind again as you're um, creating your answers to these essays. But I'm going to go through them one by one. We'll read the essay question together, and then I'll give you some pointers about, maybe how best to answer this question or what we're really looking for. So the first one, the MMS GBS is a second graduate degree following your Master in Management. What do you hope to get out of this degree to complement your Master in Management education? How will the MMS GBS help you advance your impact, not only in business, but especially in society? So, what we're really looking for in this question is a connection to our mission. So, the mission at the School of Management is to educate leaders for business and society. So, we really value both of those elements, business and society. So, tell us what that mission means to you. How do you connect with it, or how would you like to in the future give back to society, or how have you been doing so already? Mission is something that's really important to us, and we're really looking for students who resonate with this mission or who connect with it. So that's really what we're looking for in this essay question. Okay, number 2. We're looking for excellent candidates to join the GBS program. Excellence can take many different forms. Explain what excellence means to you and why you will be an excellent GBS student and future Yale SOM alum. So this one is pretty open-ended. Um, Again, we're really looking to know what does excellence mean to you? How do you define excellence? How have you sought out excellence in your life, or where have you already achieved excellence? And where are you going to continue looking for excellence as you move forward in your career? So, again, there's no right or wrong answer to this question, but we're really looking to get to know you a little bit better. What areas are most important to you, and what are you looking to contribute to going forward in your career, both during the GBS program and afterwards as well? So, again, a little bit more room here, and it's more open-ended, but that's because we're trying to get a sense of who you are and what's important to you in this essay question. Essay 3. GBS graduates go on to pursue global careers in different fields and industries. What do you envision for your future career? What parts of the GBS program, both the flexible curriculum and the resources Yale has to offer, will help you achieve this career goal? So pretty clearly, we're asking you to share with us your goals and aspirations in this question. So what are your career goals, both short-term and long-term, at this stage in your career? And how do you think the GBS program will help you to pursue or achieve those goals? So this is an opportunity for you to connect the dots for us. Why does this program make sense for you? What are you planning to achieve? What are you really looking to get involved with or do during your time here at SOM? Um, and yeah, make it make sense for us. As we're reviewing these essay questions, we're really looking again to get to know you better, to get a sense of what's important to you through all of these questions. What are you passionate about? And also to assess your writing ability. We're looking to see how you can formulate an argument, even within just a short essay question. But don't forget the basics. Proofread, make sure that you're, again, sticking to the point and answering the questions fully, and not going off on tangents. So those are all some pointers to help as you're thinking of how to answer these essay questions. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it back over to Matt for the optional information section.
Thanks. So there is an additional essay that is optional. This is not another essay for you to tell us how much you love Yale or you want to be a part of the GBS program. This is an essay to kind of help explain a little bit more about something that may not make total sense, or there might be an anomaly on your application. So maybe you had a bad grade. We all know COVID was a thing. Maybe during COVID something happened and you got a little bit lower grade than you were hoping for, and you can explain that or use this essay to explain that. Maybe you made a career shift or you're looking to make a career shift and trying to figure out, okay, where does that career shift come into play, or how does that make sense? This is a great opportunity to explain that. Give us a quick little summary or synopsis of what happened, how it happened, what you've learned from it, how you're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. It shouldn't be anything crazy. And again, it should not be telling us why you want to come to Yale or the GBS program. One of the other pieces to this, the video questions. And this is a good opportunity for us to get to know a little bit more about you, get to see how you think on your feet. So with the video questions, they're available after you pay the application fee and have completed and submitted the rest of your application. 3 video questions, you'll answer all of them in one sitting, no retakes, nothing like that. It usually takes, I would say, between 7 and 10 minutes to complete. Typically, the way that it works is a prompt will pop up. I believe you'll see myself or Evelyn. We'll ask you a question, and then you'll have usually between a minute and 90 seconds to think about your answer. You can jot down some notes if you'd like, and then camera goes on, and you'll have, again, between 60 seconds and 90 seconds to answer that question. There's no preparation required or needed for this. It's just an opportunity to be authentic, you know, speak, or come up with your answers, speak, from the heart, I guess. And again, don't read off of a prepared statement. Notes are fine, but write down bullet points. Don't write down your whole thing and then spend the whole time reading off of those notes. We can tell, and we don't want to see that. We want to see how you answer and just sort of your authentic self. So definitely take advantage of the video questions. It shouldn't be anything stressful. It should be kind of a fun opportunity to respond. And a lot of the questions are, very fun opportunities or great opportunities to kind of share more about you and your passions, your interests, and shine a little more light on who you are. Then, of course, the interview. So, if invited to an interview, it'll be over Zoom, 30 minutes long, and it usually is roughly 2 to 3 weeks after that initial deadline that you'll be invited to interview. When we go into the interview, again, similar to the video questions, be authentic. This is an opportunity to showcase who you are, again, to one of our admissions team members. You've seen us all in videos, hopefully, myself, Evelyn, Camino, Kate. So it's an opportunity to really talk about yourself, highlight some of the things. You're going to get questions from us, of course, but it should be really a conversation and an opportunity to learn more about you, your application, your interest in the program. Kind of as Evelyn mentioned with the essays, we want to get to know why you want this program, how you relate to our mission. Why is that mission important to you? What are you hoping to get from the program and then go and do after the program? We, want to hear more about this, but we also are going to want to hear more about you, who you are, what are your passions and interests? Why are some of those things, your passions? So it's a great opportunity to really bring your application to life and really kind of explain, here's who I am, here's why I want the program, and here's what I'm going to do after I complete the program. Again, notes are fine, absolutely okay to kind of come prepared. I definitely recommend printing out your resume, having some notes ready, have some questions ready potentially, but don't just read from sort of a prepared statement again. Don't, spend the whole time thinking about, oh, I got to have the perfect interview. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to, take a second to think about a response, but be authentic, be yourself, and do your best. So we'll take some time now to go through some of the questions that are in the Q&A and some of the questions that you've asked prior to or in the what is it, the app, I don't want to say application. I'm thinking applications now, but when you submitted to join us here today. So we'll go through some of those, but feel free to add some more in the Q&A section if any more come to mind as we're discussing things.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Maybe one that I can start off with that I see here and were submitted in advance from several of you as well is about average test scores. So something I should have mentioned as we were talking about the test score section of the application, but we do not have an average score that we're looking for, and neither do we have a minimum score either. So we're just looking to bring together the best and brightest applicants from all across the world. And like we mentioned, the transcripts and the test score is one element of that and how we're able to assess your academic history. But we take a holistic approach to reviewing the applications. So we're going to be looking at each and every aspect of your element of your application overall. And if there's one area that maybe isn't as strong, if another area is really, really strong, that can definitely make for a successful applicant. So again, the test score is one element of the application, but it's not the only thing that we're looking for. It's not the only thing that we're assessing. So we don't share average scores, and there's no minimum score that we're looking for. So if you feel that this program is a good fit for you, we really encourage you to apply. We're looking for well-rounded applicants to the program. We're looking for academic excellence, yes, but we're also looking for leadership potential, possibly even leadership experience already, but we know that GBS students don't have too much work experience. We have a maximum of 3 years of work experience, actually. So no leadership experience is required, at least not in a work environment. Um, but again, leadership potential, international experience or exposure is another thing that we like to see, but again, not required. Um, there's lots of different ways to stand out in our application. So just keep those things in mind as you're thinking about both your test score and your academics, but also the rest of your application.
Absolutely. I'm seeing a question here about applying this year, and if someone isn't admitted, can they reapply next year? Absolutely. So, couple things here, and definitely something I would recommend, even if you don't get admitted the first time around, definitely take an opportunity to, look at your application, look at where maybe you could have done better. I would also recommend reaching out to some of our admissions ambassadors. They're fantastic. They were admitted to the program. I do know a few people that have applied before and not gotten admitted, but then applied the next year, whether it be, they applied as a standalone and then took a year to kind of further themselves, or they went and did their MIM program and then applied again afterwards and were admitted to the program. Sometimes it's just kind of figuring out, who you are, what you're really looking for, and what you're really passionate about, and then putting that on the pages for us to take a look at. So absolutely, you can apply next year if you don't get admitted this year, but definitely put forward your best application and then, be honest if you aren't admitted, reviewing it for next year.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. I see another question here asking about kind of multi-school applicants. So what I mean by that is through the M2M pathway, we actually have three different partner schools, HSA Paris, HKUST in Hong Kong, and UBC Sauder in Vancouver. So through the M2M, you do actually have the opportunity to apply to the GBS program through multiple or even all of those pathway schools. So you might receive one answer from one school and a different answer from another school, meaning the year one schools, you could receive one answer from one and a different answer from another. You will only be read and assessed with Yale one time in any given application year. So we will review your application once, although it will be in consideration for both of those partner schools. You will receive one interview invitation, and you'll only be interviewed once, and you'll receive one admissions decision, whether it's admit or deny, for the GBS program in any given year. So that decision from Yale would stand true for both or any of the year one schools that you're applying to in the same application year. So if you've gotten in through one school and you've not gotten in through another school, the answer from Yale would remain the same for both of those schools. So again, you would be able to know the answer from Yale for either school. If you get into both schools, both year one schools, and you get into Yale, then you have the choice of which path you'd like to choose and which year one school you'd like to choose. So please just let us know in that situation what your choice was at the end of that so that we can update our records on our end. But I hope that helps to clarify the process for a multi-school applicant through the M2M pathway. If you still have questions after what I've just covered, please feel free to ask another question in the Q&A. But hopefully that helped to clear up the any confusion about the process there.
I'm seeing a couple questions here on sort of what counts or in the activities part of the application, what can we put in there and from how long ago? So I think this is a good question. I think in that section, volunteer experience, if you joined clubs or other things during undergraduate, I think the best thing I could say is don't go back so far that it almost feels irrelevant. Like if you're talking about something, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, but maybe something from middle school, let's say, that might be a little bit irrelevant, but things that you've done maybe in your undergraduate studies or during your MIM program. If you did some stuff in, later in high school, maybe like a big volunteering experience or something, that would be great. but I wouldn't say don't go too far back. I think talk about some of the recent activities, volunteering, clubs, things like that that you've engaged in, because I'm sure that all of you have done quite a bit over the last few years to kind of stay involved and be a part of the community.
Thanks, Matt. I'm seeing a question here particularly about reference letters, so I just wanted to address that one. Somebody's asking if their recommender's secretary could submit their letter of recommendation for them. The answer to that is yes, that would be fine as long as your recommender, that's their preferred pathway. You would just have them submit through the application portal in the same way. What we want to make sure doesn't happen is for you to submit the letter yourself. So sometimes recommenders will send you your letter of recommendation for you to see, and that's great. That's fine. You can take a look at it, but we don't want you to submit it yourself. We really want it to come directly from your recommender in the best case scenario. But if your recommender would prefer for somebody on their team to submit it, like their secretary, that would be fine. Another thing that I can mention, again, recommenders are really busy people, so sometimes they might even suggest that maybe you start a draft of the letter, or you even write the letter yourself, and then they'll just sign it for you. If that happens to you, it's really time to find a new recommender. So we really want to hear directly from somebody who has worked with you, what that experience was like, and what it is like, what you are like as an employee and as a colleague. Um, so the idea is for somebody else to be writing about you and to submit it directly to us. Make sure that you're choosing somebody who has the energy and enthusiasm and time to spend writing a really great letter of recommendation for you. So hopefully that helps to clarify a little bit more about the recommendation letters there.
I'm seeing a question. The application fee cannot be waived. It is something that we do not waive for anybody. And then I'm also seeing a question on deferring admission for a year. So if you're admitted to the program, you would then you would go to your year one program. And then in between that, let's say if you're on the M2M pathway, you can take a gap year, a 1 year gap year between, let's say, your HSA, HKUST, or UBC program, and then joining us here at Yale. If you're looking at the GBS program, then I would recommend, and we always recommend, that you apply in the year that you're planning on coming. We understand there are extenuating circumstances that sometimes, lead to that deferral. Deferrals may be granted, but are not guaranteed. So it's something we recommend applying in the year that you plan on attending Yale's GBS program.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Matt. One other thing that we can mention, particularly for the M2M pathways, there is a gap year potential that you can take in between your year one and your year two schools. So if you are looking to gain a little bit more work experience, that's a really great pathway for you. You can, again, take your year one school, complete your MIM, and then if you would like, you can choose to take an optional gap year between the 2 years to gain a bit more experience, maybe save a little bit more money, and then come to us the following year. So it's only 1 year, and it cannot be extended past, for longer than that. But it is a really nice element of the M2M pathway if that's something that you're looking for as well. So I see somebody's asking about whether a full-time internship would be considered as work experience in terms of your resume and what to enter in your application. The answer is yes. That's exactly what we're looking for is full-time work experience. We're looking for a paid position and something that was full-time. As Matt mentioned earlier, if you have sort of unpaid experience or a part-time position, that's something that you can certainly put on your resume, but probably not under the work experience section. That could be kind of other activities or somewhere else that's not exactly work experience because we wouldn't consider an unpaid or a part-time or a remote position as well. If you did work remotely full-time and it was paid, that still counts as as a work experience, but please note on your resume that it was a remote position. Okay, I see a question particularly from UBC about the B plus MM program. So I have to admit, I'll have to brush up on that one because it is a little bit more specific for specific applicants. But in general, the question is asking about whether you can apply during the program or you need to wait until afterwards. So I believe you can apply while the program is still happening. Again, as Matt mentioned, you should really be applying in the year that you're planning to attend. So our program starts in August, at the end of August or middle of August. Um, and so right now we're accepting applications for August 2025 and the class of 2026. So right, the time that you should apply is the year before you will be planning to attend. Okay, it looks like we have another question here. Let me just read it.
Yeah. It looks specific relating to sort of essays. Um, Let me see here.
Yes.
So I'll take another question while you're checking up on that. So do students have opportunities to collaborate and work with students from other programs? Yes. So that's something typically we go over that a little bit more in depth in our, information sessions. So when you're a student at Yale SOM, there will be a few select classes that are just for GBS students. So you're going to be in class with your GBS cohort working with those students. Then from there, a lot of your classes, since you do get a lot of freedom and flexibility, are going to be with MBA students, MAM students. They may be with asset management or systemic risk students. You may also be with a variety of other students across Yale SOM and across Yale University. So one of the great things is you're not just lumped into the same group or cohort 24/7. You really get to work with a variety of students. Now, outside the classroom, that's a whole other thing, working in clubs and things like that. You're going to get even more, I guess I'll say, diversity of student. With the clubs, Yale SOM does have a number of clubs that you can join, and you're going to have students from all different Yale SOM programs. You can also go out and join different sports teams. I know we have rugby, ice hockey, soccer, things like that. And you're going to really get to see even more students from across Yale's variety of schools, grad schools, undergrad, all of that. So a lot of opportunity to work with students and people from across Yale University.
Thanks, Matt. I was just typing an answer to
Yeah.
this question about the essays, but in general, so this question is kind of referring to our different application requirements for different M2M school pathways. So for some schools, we're able to receive the essays that are written with one school's application directly, and with other schools, there's only an optional essay component. So we actually ask students to complete our 3 essays um, as part of their M2M application as well. So I've typed an answer to this applicant directly. So please just follow up with us so that we can check into your case specifically, so I can give you the best answer here, just so that we can make it a case by case answer for you.
I'm seeing a question. Do you have tips for applications or applicants in the US or in UK for, I guess, for European students or American students? So I think similar to any application, let yourself shine. I think, talk about the experiences you've had thus far and how they've made you into the person you are. Talk about how you relate to our mission, what you want to do. Talk about the, things at Yale. I think that's something students often talk about Yale's this great school, but then it kind of, I don't want to say fizzles out, but stops there. Look online. You can find a variety, like our class list, an elective list. You can find different clubs and organizations, different conferences and events, speaker series. You can find a lot of information on this. Talk about how that's going to help you. Talk about what classes you're interested in and why they might help you. Talk about the clubs and how, maybe you're going to connect with some people or you're hoping to gain something from them. All of those sorts of things show us the research, the depth of knowledge you have about the program. And it gives us the confidence that, if you are admitted and when you get to Yale, you're going to be able to get involved, get right into it, and, hopefully have a very successful time. We say it's a 1 year program. It's really 9 months by the time that everything comes up, and it flies by. I talked to a variety of students just this past week, and they're all shocked that they're in exams for, the end of their first term. It's pretty crazy. So definitely we want to see those things because it really helps us understand how you're going to take advantage of the resources at Yale and what you're going to do with them. And again, I think there's no right or wrong answer for someone from North America versus Europe versus Asia versus Africa versus South America. I think just highlight your strengths. You can talk about your weaknesses, but talk about how Yale is going to help you build off of those weaknesses or build them up so that they're strengths too. And then what you're going to do after to help be a part of, global solutions and, live our mission of educating leaders for business and society.
Great, thanks, Matt. Let us know if you have any other questions. Just typing one more answer here, but oh, great. I think we had another one come in. 1 second.
So a startup experience. So if you've started a business or something to that effect, one, if you're going to put that down as work experience, make sure you have documentation showing, that this is a business that you've started or that this is an authentic thing. Otherwise, maybe not under work experience, maybe under a different category. But with that, you can highlight that and really talk about, what you've learned from it, what you're hoping to do with it. Is it something that, you started in high school and maybe you learned some things from it and it kind of fizzled in college, or maybe during COVID, something, it kind of fell apart and you realized, this wasn't for me in that moment, or talk about the experience of it, talk about what you did. It's an opportunity to really showcase something that you took a risk and took an opportunity to try something that, you know, there's always a lot of risk involved and, it could go great, it could go poorly, but talk about it from that perspective and highlight, what you learned from that experience. If you're still doing it, talk about, what you're learning right now and maybe what Yale can offer, what resources are available that you feel are going to help you with your startup and help you build it up into the company or the brand that you hope it can be.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Matt. As Matt mentioned as well, some ways to document your work experience for the proof of employment section if you have a startup is like a business license or even business contracts, really any kind of documentation that you have would be fine. And if you have questions about that, then feel free to email us at gbs@yale.edu, and we can try and take a look for you and make sure that your proof of employment would be acceptable. Um, yeah, hopefully that helps. Um, okay, great. I see another couple of questions here.
Mhm.
Um, So a person is asking if a sports coach would be somebody who could write a letter of recommendation. Probably not. That's simply because we're really looking for a professional work experience recommender. So somebody who's worked with you in a professional capacity. So if sports is your profession and you're working, as an assistant coach or you're working, your work experience has been through this sports experience, then that could be something potential. But if you were a member of the sports team and this person was your coach, they're probably not going to be a great person to write a recommendation letter for you, even if they know you really well. Again, simply because we're looking for somebody who can speak to what it was like working with you. In a professional capacity in a professional working environment. So if you'd like them to submit a supplementary letter of recommendation, that could be fine. But yeah, we're really primarily looking for somebody who you were working with in a paid working position. Hopefully that helps.
Let's see. What unique qualities or experiences do successful students in the M2M program typically demonstrate? Um, so this is a tough one because I think there are so many different skills, qualities, traits, things that they often are able to highlight or express. I think some of the biggest ones are one, curiosity for knowledge, that desire to learn, grow, develop your skills, and knowing that there's so much more out there. I think willingness to work with other people. This is a cohort that we really want people to come together, and it's not just about, obviously we want you to succeed and we want you to grow and develop and be your best, but in that same vein we want you to hopefully shed some light on some of the experience you've had and maybe help someone else grow in the program. I think myself, I come from a background in athletics as a coach. Evelyn comes from a completely different background, and it's something that over time I'm going to hopefully share a little bit of my knowledge with Evelyn in the same way that Evelyn shares a little bit with me. So we both are growing there. And I think that's something that hopefully you're willing to give just as much as you receive. And I think with that, it's all about building each other up, building our community up. And then I think really just being, at your best, as Evelyn mentioned earlier. Getting into Yale is the easy part. If you talk with any of our students, they're going to tell you that. I think having that understanding of when you're admitted or if you're admitted, you need to come prepared and really have done your research. The Career Development Office starts working with students usually in June, July, and they do that so that when you get to campus, you're ready to hopefully start the recruiting process. When you get to campus, hopefully you've thought about classes and clubs you want to join so that you're already a little bit ahead of the game and you can start, getting into clubs, getting involved, getting into courses that you actually want that are going to help you. And also be able to, as I mentioned, do the recruiting so that it just flows seamlessly. Because honestly, if you're not prepared and you kind of show up not knowing what courses you want, what clubs you want to join, you've done none of the CDO or career development stuff during the summer, you're going to show up and be so far behind the eight ball that it definitely can stress you out and be not the most fun way to start. Students absolutely do that and are still successful and able to find success, but it really helps if you're prepared and you're thinking about these things ahead of time.
We have one more question, again, about the letter of recommendation. So if it has to be somebody from a paid working environment or whether a part-time unpaid supervisor would be acceptable. We really would prefer somebody who has worked with you in a paid environment. That would definitely be our top preference, to receive a letter of recommendation from. It could be acceptable to have somebody who worked with you on a part-time basis or in an unpaid position. If you have a question about this specifically, I would recommend maybe sending us your resume and asking specifically, if somebody from this work experience would be fine to submit a letter of recommendation. Um, for you. I think it would sort of help us to get an idea of what your work experience has been like before answering this question completely. So sorry that doesn't answer your question fully, but our preference would really be to have a paid full-time work experience as your recommender, but understand that some applicants might not necessarily have that in their history, their work experience history. Also, for the person who was asking about a startup, if you only have startup work experience and you might not, maybe you've never had an official boss or supervisor or somebody else who was above you who could write a letter of recommendation, you could ask somebody who you have been working with, like a contractor or if you have done business deals with other people, basically somebody who can speak to what it's been like working with you in an official work capacity. That would be an acceptable person to have as your recommender. And again, that person would need to submit the letter directly to us. It should not be going to you. So hopefully that helps. Alrighty, I don't see any more questions. So please, if you have any more last minute questions, please feel free to add them now. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and advance our slides and give a final piece of advice. So, Matt, do you want to kick us off and share your final piece of advice, and then I will share mine?
Sure. I would say plan ahead. Deadlines can really sneak up with you. Similar to this program, it flies by, definitely quicker than we want it to, and deadlines will sneak up on you way faster than you expect. We may not be able to move forward with your application if it's not complete, if you're missing a transcript or a recommendation letter, or you haven't submitted something. So really make sure that you have planned ahead, you know your deadlines, you've reached out to your recommender in advance and given them plenty of time to write their letter and submit it. Make sure that you have a good understanding of what the program is, what it offers, all of those sorts of things so that you have time to write out your essays and review them and submit them before the deadline. So I would say plan ahead is my best piece of advice or my final piece.
Definitely a really good piece of advice. Thank you, Matt. For my final piece of advice, I would say really be authentic and stay true to who you are. Um, I think it can be easy to get lost sometimes in these applications, and we're really looking to get a sense of who you are, to understand you and what's important to you, what you've achieved through your life so far, and what you're aiming to achieve going forward. So give us a sense of that, of who you are, and stay true to that through this application. I think Matt mentioned a few really good pieces of advice earlier in terms of the video questions. Don't read your video questions. Don't type it into AI and try and get a canned answer to a video question prompt. Likewise with the essays, be true to who you are, be authentic, craft the responses yourself, and take this as an opportunity to show us what's important to you and who you are. We would so much rather see an application that is really genuine and authentic and maybe has a few imperfections in it than something that um, is clearly being read off of a page or um, yeah, isn't doesn't really ring as authentically. So hopefully that helps. Again, use this as an opportunity to connect the dots for us. Tell us why this program makes sense for you at this time, what you're planning to achieve through the program, and as a next step in your life, and how this program, the GBS program, is going to help you get there. So hopefully that helps as some final advice for you. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to see so many of you um, listening in and hearing about how you can best um, put together your application for the GBS program. We have a couple of QR codes for you here. The one on the left is going to take you to our website. There's lots more information there about the GBS program. As we mentioned earlier at the beginning of this webinar as well, there's also some previous webinars that we've already done earlier this year with more information about the program. And we have students and alumni who are joining us on panels as well. So please check those out. Those will be helpful for you as well as you're putting together your application. Um, the QR code on the right is going to bring us to our upcoming events page, so feel free to check that out. Our next upcoming event, I think, is going to be a Q&A session, which are small group sessions hosted by an admissions committee member. So we are always, happy to answer your questions live through those sessions as well, but also through our email account. So if you really can't wait until our next Q&A session, or you just have a burning question, or you just feel like it would be easier to ask over email, please feel free to email us at any time. Our email address is gbs@yale.edu. We'll get back to you as soon as we can, and we're always happy to answer questions or to interact or help however we can over email as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out at any time. And thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.